Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
When the system of justice doesn't work, Bronson does. When the courts can't do what they must, Bronson will. Bronson fighting all the evil that men do.
Torture as a political instrument has become a subtle and sophisticated specialty.
When the most savage murderer cannot be caught or stopped, there is only one man to turn to.
You don't seem like the kind of man that would commission somebody's death.
I'm not, but the doctor stands outside the moral laws of civilized people.
His kidneys and spleen were crushed. His teeth were completely broken.
When evil becomes above the law, the only law left belongs to Bronson.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to rattle his cage.
In the execution of justice, there is no executioner like him.
Go towards him! Towards him!
In the name of revenge, there is just one name. Bronson, fighting all the evil that men do.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie The Evil That Men Do from 1984. The studio was TriStar Pictures. The release date was September 21st, 1984. The running time 90 minutes, and it was rated R. The budget was $4.5 million, and the box office took in $13 million, making it the 68th ranked movie of 1984. Now, I've covered a number of Charles Bronson films, so you already know I'm a fan. I'm pretty sure I saw this as a very much edited version of the film on television when I was a kid. When I finally saw the theatrical release on video years later, I understood why the film was heavily edited. Alright, let's get into the making of the film. At this point in Charles Bronson's career, he made a certain kind of film, and usually they were of the violent nature. His last two films prior to The Evil That Men Do were Death Wish 2 and 10 to Midnight, both of which I've covered as episodes on this podcast, so check them out if you're so inclined. The Evil That Men Do is based on a 1978 novel of the same title written by R. Lance Hill. The rights of the film were obtained in 1980 by Bronson, along with his actress wife Jo Ireland and director J. Lee Thompson and producer Pancho Coner. The film was originally pitched to Cannon Films, whom Bronson worked with previously, but Cannon didn't want to reimburse the cost of the screenplay, and TriStar was chosen instead. Thompson and Bronson worked on 4 films together. They were St. Ives, The White Buffalo, Cabo Blanco, and 10 to Midnight prior to The Evil That Men Do. They would go on to make 4 more films together after this film. Now, Thompson was not the original director of The Evil That Men Do. It was actually Fielder Cook. He began pre-production in Mexico. It was then determined by the producers that Cook was not going to be the right director for the film, and Thompson was brought in before filming began. Jo Ireland was originally going to play the Rihanna role, as she was often the co-star with her husband. However, Ireland dropped out, and Theresa Saldana was given the part. Saldana played Robert De Niro's first wife in the film Raging Bull. I also covered her quite remarkable and traumatic life when she was attacked by a stalker in 1982 and survived a serious stabbing, which left her hospitalized for over 4 months. This was Saldana's first film after her attack. Alright, let's get into the film. So it opens in Suriname, which is a country in South America. The opening is actually super creepy, almost like the intro music to the song Hell Awaits from Slayer. We then see the hooded figures in black in a fuzzy filtered shot. There are butchered dead bodies laying on hospital beds, covered in blood, almost like experiments have been performed on them. or just pure torture in this case. A man in a black hood known as the Doctor, played by Joseph Maher, is giving a twisted lecture about torture to a number of military and government personnel.
Gentlemen, torture as a political instrument is no longer the crude and brutal extraction of information from one's enemies. It has become a subtle and sophisticated specialty, to be carried out with medical and scientific precision. Physical and psychological pain is applied in unbearable yet controlled doses to destroy the subject's will and spirit as the body clings to life. The process can take weeks, even months, during which the subject is kept trapped in a delicate, shall we say, nightmare existence of terror. Now, the hood which serves to separate the interrogator and subject psychologically is not always necessary. There are times when one does without it.
Hidalgo! George Hidalgo!
You have seen, gentlemen, how a woman must be made to remove her own clothing, depriving her of her dignity. With a man, it is the opposite. Strip him! Excuse me, gentlemen.
Doctor, there's some kind of trouble outside of the city. I must get you to the hotel.
Well, this won't take long. Mr. Hidalgo, or I should say George, since I feel we almost know each other, I've had an opportunity to read some of your articles about me. Astute, for the most part, though you do have certain facts wrong. You credit me with instructing the leaders of over 35 countries. Flattering, I must say, but the actual number is 20. Notice, gentlemen, how the subject clings to compensatory morale and habitual defenses. Electrodes.
The journalist is then electrocuted consistently until his body finally gives up, as electrodes have been strategically placed in the worst areas possible for a male. You can use your imagination. The Doctor character is likely inspired by Joseph Mengele and other Nazi war criminals of World War II. While the torture lecture is going on, outside of the building, a special ops team from Israel attempts to attach a bomb to the car of the Doctor in an assassination attempt. The plan is foiled when the Doctor's security team puts him in another car. The Doctor gets away while the other car explodes, which kills the special agent and one of the military personnel at the lecture. We are then taken to the Cayman Islands, where we meet Holland as Charles Bronson, who is a retired CIA assassin. He's paid a visit by a man named Hector, played by José Ferrer, who was a friend of the murdered journalist.
Holland?
Yes.
My name is Hector Lamelin. George Hidalgo may have spoken to you about me.
Oh, yes. How are you? How's George?
He's dead.
How's George's daughter and widow doing?
You knew them?
Nobody talks about him a lot.
They're doing as well as can be expected.
I just don't understand. George was a journalist. He had no business getting mixed up with someone like the Doctor.
He always counted on you on getting the job done. He felt he had no other choice. Now I'm here, for myself and for others, hoping to convince you to do it.
Hector, you don't seem like the kind of man that would commission somebody's death.
I'm not, but the Doctor stands outside the moral laws of civilized people, George died trying to stop that man. How much will it cost?
Hector, like I told George, I'm retired. Look.
You can't withdraw from the world, Holland. You know, in my clinic, I have patients from all over the world. They have recorded their experiences with the doctor on tapes. I brought some with me. Will you look at them, at least?
Sure.
I was arrested with my sister and her husband. They said we had been giving guns to the rebels, but it was a lie. We had done nothing. My sister was pregnant, and they beat her many times on the belly. One day they took her away. I never saw her again, but I was told her body was found in the street. When she was cut open, her husband's head was found inside her. My wife and children were taken from me. The doctor forced my wife to eat her own excrement. My children's bones were broken. They said it would continue until I confessed crimes against the government, but I invented things to save my family, and they said I was lying. They made me watch while my friend was stripped naked and made to stand against a wooden table. Two men held him while the doctor drove nails through his testicles. He fainted many times from the pain. And each time they threw water on him to revive him. My husband was made to watch while I was raped with a bottle, and then the doctor killed him in front of me, very slowly by cutting him open and pulling out his intestines. The doctor forced me to eat ground glass. It hurt my inside so bad that I cannot have solid food even now. My skin was burned with acid and needles were pushed under my fingernails. The doctor forced me to drink my own urine. All my hair was taken off and the doctor burned my scalp with cigarettes. At the time of the coup, I was arrested and taken to the National Stadium. I can never forget the man in the hood, the man they called the doctor. It was he who selected those to be tortured, those to be shot. All day and all night you could hear the gunfire and the screams. They injected me with a drug every day. It gave me headaches so bad I felt my skull was being split open, and I had terrible cramps all over my body.
The doctor.
For many weeks, I never was able to
The doctor. The doctor. Every one of them. Clement Moloch, the man they called the doctor. Will you do it?
Until I passed out from the pain, and then they broke.
Like I said, I'm retired.
Even with the horrific descriptions from the survivors of the doctor's torture, Holland refuses to get involved. We're then taken to Guatemala City, where the doctor and his sister Claire, played by Antoinette Bauer, meet with a military official.
Clement, a pleasure. And my dear Senora Moloch. Please be seated.
Why are we here, Aristos?
Relax, Clement. May I offer you a drink?
Just mineral water.
There is a problem, Clement. The Council for Central American States has just concluded its meetings in Costa Rica.
Hypocrites. Every government represented condemns my brother publicly and then welcomes him privately.
They have called for another meeting and study of human rights violations.
Human rights violations? There is no such thing. There is only the security of the state and those who would undermine that security.
We must play the game.
What are you suggesting?
A move.
My brother had a great deal to do with making this country secure, Victor. If his work should have earned us a welcome anywhere, it's here.
I only reflect my precedent, Senora.
How long are you giving us?
Quickly as possible.
We'll see.
We then go to Mexico City, where Hector lectures at a college. It seems that Holland has had a change of heart and has decided to take on the task to assassinate the doctor. Holland requests that to be undercover, he will need to appear as a family man with a wife and child. They will go to Guatemala, the country where the doctor lives and predominantly works because he isn't allowed in most countries for his crimes against humanity. The woman that will accompany Holland is Rihanna, that's Theresa Saldana, the widow of the murdered journalist. Holland is at first hesitant to bring Rihanna due to her emotional connection to the job, but does agree as she would fit the role. Plus, she does have a preteen daughter that would also fit the family man cover. When they arrive in Guatemala, they meet with Max Ortiz, played by Rene Enriquez, who is a friend of Hector and gives Holland all the details and day-to-day routines about the doctor and his associates.
Max Ortiz?
Rihanna.
¿Cómo estás?
Tanto tiempo sin verte. Sara, ¿cómo has crecido? ¡Qué linda!
Gracias.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Holland.
Pleasure's all mine.
The doctor has 3 men in particular who never leave his side. Everyone a thoroughly trained assassin. Randolph Whitley, a former intelligence officer. He's the doctor's communications expert. He likes to spend his off hours in the filthiest dives in the barrio. Carl Hausman, Green Beret originally, then he was with the CIA before the doctor hired him away. This one is a mystery. He's called Chilero. He's probably Basque. He's Moloch's chauffeur. And then there is Moloch himself, the doctor. I don't suppose he needs any introduction.
It's a cozy little family.
Most of my collection is at my place in the country.
What I really need is a shotgun with a sawed-off barrel and shells to go with it, and a large caliber handgun. Tell me more about Moloch. Does he follow any kind of routine?
He's rarely seen in public. The closest thing to a routine would be going to the cockfights.
And to the cockfights we go. Such a lovely sport, eh? The doctor and his sister have their own private box at the fights, and we learn that the doctor and his sister are almost inseparable. They've like some weird Freudian thing going on. Rihanna leaves the fights early after seeing the doctor in his box, as she was going to be sick just from the sight of him. Though Rihanna certainly wants the doctor killed, she doesn't necessarily trust Holland, as he's too calm and cold for her liking. However, her daughter takes an immediate liking to Holland, which is likely due to the innocence of children. The compound that the doctor and his sister live in is like a fortress of security, with cameras and armed men all over. Holland does some recon work to determine the layout, but has no intentions of breaching the compound. He's mostly looking to see the men who work for the doctor. After deciding that he has all the information he needs, Holland believes it's best for Rihanna and her daughter to leave Guatemala to stay out of danger. However, Rihanna wants to see the job through and refuses to leave. Holland and Rihanna follow the doctor's head of security named Randolph, played by Raymond St. Jacques. He visits the Guatemalan embassy and specifically the U.S. ambassador, Paul Briggs, played by John Glover.
Jesus Christ, you scared the shit out of me.
Well. Protector of the free world, hard at work, huh?
Give me a break, Randolph.
You give us a break. What's this crap you've been handing the doctor?
Washington's putting on the pressure. I can't tell the locals to let him stay here without sticking my neck way out.
Then, Briggs, you stick your neck way.
I suggest you don't rock the boat, Randolph, for plenty of countries would be happy to have him back.
You suggest?
The doctor loves it here. The air agrees with him. Damn it, Randolph, if I used any influence with these people, Washington would know in 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, my ass would be posted to Afghanistan.
Briggs, want to play hardball? We can play hardball, too. Now, the doctor has done all of the dirty work you've needed. Now it's time to call in the markers. And remember, all those congressional committees would be very interested in how you've used the doctor's services. Besides, a few well-placed leaks, nothing to it.
I'll see what I can do.
That's exactly what you're going to do, and see to it that it's done.
After Randolph's meeting with Briggs, Holland and Rihanna follow Randolph to a seedy bar. In an amusing scene that fans of Charles Bronson movies will adore, a large, unpleasant fellow that looks like the Latino version of Lurch from the Addams Family decides to harass Rihanna while Holland is at the bar getting drinks. When Holland returns, he decides to handle Lurch in a very amusing way. He grabs him as hard as he can in the groin and then proceeds to put his boot on Lurch's neck while maintaining a vice-lock grip on the dude's junk. Lurch eventually passes out or he dies. I have no idea, honestly. This is all while the seedy onlookers cheer. This catches the attention and praise of Randolph.
You all right?
Hey! You got strong hands, boy.
I just had glass chandeliers. I didn't know what the hell else to do. Boy, a real big, scary guy he is.
You're an American. That's right.
It's nice to hear somebody else speak English now and then, isn't it? Would you like to join us?
I don't mind if I do.
The table right over there. My name's Bart Smith. My wife, Nancy.
Hello, Nancy. I'm Randolph. What are you all doing in here anyway? I mean, what are you, tourists?
Sort of.
This is not your usual tourist attraction.
Well, we're not your usual tourists. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Life just gets dull and nothing like a little variety to spice things up, huh?
That's right. You know, Nancy and me, we come from a small town up in Nebraska. And we always have to go someplace else for excitement and variety, you know?
Well, tell me, Bart. What kind of excitement are you looking for?
You know, me and Nancy, we've been into a lot of things. And we've learned tricks you wouldn't believe. We've been into things like wife swapping and... You married?
No, I'm divorced. But remember, 3's company and 4 is definitely a crowd. Hey, man, I am down for anything or anybody.
3's all right with me?
It's definitely all right with me. You got a place?
You bet. Well, there we are. Dear, why don't you go in and get something more comfortable? Let's you and me make ourselves at home.
Sounds like a great idea. Woo! Not bad. First class pad. Mm-hmm. Well, how about a drink to get this party started?
Don't come in here.
Oh, my God.
Keep yourself together.
You didn't tell me you were going to kill.
And if I had?
You're depraved. You've no principles whatever.
I didn't know our main concern here was principles.
You're an efficient killer.
All right, Brianna, now stop it. I think it's time for you to get Sarah and go home. Tell Max to get you on the earliest plane. And you call me at the hotel. Tell me the flight number and the time. Nothing else.
Once Holland got Randolph back to the room, Holland immediately ambushed Randolph by throwing a knife straight at his jugular. While this should have instantly killed most men, it's a Charles Bronson movie, so the scene was drawn out just a little bit as Randolph inched closer to Holland before finally collapsing dead. Rihanna, horrified with what just happened, finally agrees to leave Guatemala, as the reality of what Holland was hired to do is starting to sink in for her. Holland then dumps Randolph's body outside of the doctor's compound, along with shooting a few of the security cameras, which definitely sends a message to the doctor. The next day, Holland gets a call from Rihanna informing that she never left the country. She wants to see for herself that the doctor is actually killed by Holland. Now the doctor is panicked and visits Briggs at the embassy and demands protection. Holland is more up his sleeve to rattle the doctor into the open. One is by kidnapping his sister Claire. Okay, there's about 30 minutes left and plenty of action and ass-kicking and killing by Charles Bronson, which is why people watch these films to begin with. I know I do. So while this film is likely not for everyone, partly due to the subject matter and the violence, I will say the ultimate ending is pretty fabulous and definitely apropos for the film. When it comes to Bronson films, especially the canon years, there are a certain amount of gratuitous violence that kind of came with the territory. I personally enjoyed these films, but I get that they may not be for everyone again. However, if you like revenge or payback films, this is one to check out. Alright, a few fun facts. While filming in Mexico, Charles Bronson and his wife, Jo Ireland, took in a young orphan under their wings to make sure that he was fed and taken care of every day that they were there. The boy got his choice of food from the catering on the film and was allowed to eat before any of the crew got their chance to eat. Now, Charles Bronson's contract for this picture stipulated he was required to work for a minimum of 8 hours a day. All right, one person that always works 8 hours a day, not necessarily on this podcast, but I'm happy she joins me, and that is our special guest, Lindsay, who likes Charles Bronson films, but I don't think she's ever seen this one, so we're going to get her fresh take on it. You may be surprised about how she feels about this one. And then I'll be back next week to talk about yet another random movie from my DVD collection. Okay, welcome back. We got Lindsay on one that maybe you wouldn't expect her to be interested in, but she was, and I tell you, she liked it a lot better than Dream a Little Dream.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Brian, thanks for having me back on. Yeah, this was awesome. Like, just so good, and I wasn't even knowing what to expect, except when you hear the name Charles Bronson, you pretty much have a vision of this, like, mercenary, good guy, bad guy, anti-hero.
Yeah.
Also, my dad loved him.
Yeah.
And, oh yeah, he absolutely delivers in this.
So, have you ever seen Death Wish, the original?
I know about it, and I know my dad loved it.
Yeah.
You know, I can't honestly say
you should see it.
I've seen the whole thing. I think it's like some of his films, including this one, they can be like a little bit hard to watch.
Well, this one starts off really bad.
Not because they're not good, but because they're just very shocking.
Brutal.
They're brutal.
So,
yeah.
I mean, you have this basically, they don't call him a Nazi, but he seems like a Nazi that somehow is living in South America and is being hired by these dictators to teach torture methods. And the film starts off with that. And basically, a guy is tortured in every which way possible and killed.
Including a pregnant woman who was dead. That was just like, whoa.
Oh, yeah, in the hospital.
You see her on a gurney, and you're like, oh my God, this is not okay.
It's brutal. You wouldn't expect to see this. And then
it was just not okay.
And then, of course, hearing so when the friend of the journalist that was killed in the beginning comes to see if Bronson's interested in avenging his friend's murder, hearing the translated descriptions of what they went through are pretty horrific. You don't even need to see it.
Oh my God, it'll make your stomach turn,
Yeah.
and you almost want to stop because it's really bad. And most of it is not being done in English.
No,
most of it is people from other countries telling their story in their own language, and it's translated in English like a dubbing. And I mean, I have to tell you, like, it was make it stop. It was pretty bad.
And they kept it going. Well, so my dad's a writer, and he always used to say, you have to make your villains so bad that you have to hate them. You have to have this visceral reaction. Otherwise, if it's just a wishy-washy villain, your hero really can't be that good of a guy. Like, you really root for Bronson to, take out as many people as possible to get to this guy.
Oh yeah, and Bronson's whole thing is he's a good guy that does bad things in the name of being a good guy and doing good things.
Yeah.
So when you see and hear how incredibly evil and unlikable this awful the doctor, they call him, character is, absolutely you're rooting for Bronson to take the job and go kick some ass. I mean, 100% you're already invested. By the time they start, and this is pretty early on in the film.
Oh, yeah.
By the time they start talking, these talking heads on a video of what had happened to them and people they know, you're like, that's it. Get this man a plane ticket and get him out of there. Get him on the road to some ass-kicking justice.
Well, what I also like about these films is, one, they're really quick paced. They're an hour and a half. The audience, you know what you're going to get with Bronson, which is you're going to get some good kills, as one reviewer said at the time. And they don't really get into his backstory that much. You know he's probably an operative at some point.
You can assume it.
You can assume it. And I think that's what's brilliant about these films is they really don't dig deep into background. It's kind of up to you.
Today they'd make a prequel.
Or it'd be 2.5 hours long and it's too much, where they pretty much like you can figure it out. Maybe audiences were more savvy back then, where they kind of get this guy's already a badass. You don't really need to get into his history.
It's well implied because, the film sort of starts where, other than that crazy early scene, which is like, whoa.
But that gets you invested early.
Oh, yeah. But it starts
and the botched assassination, too.
Jesus. It starts with Bronson, though, like, in an undisclosed, location, which you eventually find out where it is, which is the Cayman Islands. Yeah. But this, in the beginning, it's this undisclosed beachy location where he just looks so serene and happy and like, this is a movie where you made the narrative of who he was already up in your head.
Yeah.
This guy is ex-special forces, CIA, operative, something, right?
Yep.
Like TBD, but something in there. And he's decided to retire and he's walked away from it all. And now he's living this beautiful life on this serene beach and this is all he needs. And he doesn't want to be doing that work anymore. And he's happy, just living life this way. I mean, you just know that from a couple of scenes. They don't even need to tell you that that's what it is. And I think that this film did that well. It didn't have to tell the backstory because every single moment, and it doesn't even take that many moments to do this, but the early part of the film set it up perfectly. You already know the narrative.
Well, I wish filmmakers would watch some of these films and one, either get an editor or learn how to write quick, they get into it quickly. The other thing I liked about this is it wasn't cheesy when it came to a potential love story. There is a woman in it that's George's, the guy, the journalist that died, his wife, and obviously they had a daughter too. But there's no kind of cliched romance here at all.
No, Bronson's there to do a job and he's doing the job.
That's right.
She's not interested in something.
Yeah.
He's not interested in something. They're both interested in revenge,
right? And
they're focused on their job.
But even that's what the interesting part about this movie's deeper than you think, because she's almost more, even though she obviously wants to avenge her husband's death, she's almost like sickened about what he has to do, that he's so cold about basically just killing people. But that's his gig.
Well, and she's just
not ready for it.
Used to that.
No,
that's not her world. She has to be a cover story of being his wife to even be there in the first place. And that required her to bring her own daughter.
Yeah.
The guy who was tortured, George, his biological daughter. I mean, she walked into this with her most precious cargo, like all she had left in the world after she lost her husband. I mean, it's pretty risky. And she's putting a lot of faith in Charles Bronson to be the person that he says he's going to be, but in order to be that, he had to be ruthless, and I think she struggled with that. It's just not something she confronted every day, and who would? If she didn't have that reaction, I guess I'd be a little nervous.
So you never, so going back to your dad, because your dad loved the classic badass action guys like Bronson,
Chuck
Norris, Clint Eastwood.
Oh yeah,
those type. So you wouldn't walk in watching you wouldn't be interested and drawn to these movies like when you were a kid, or you were just like, eh.
Oh, I think I was drawn to some of these things, and some of these things I watched with my dad. I mean, back in the day when all those boxing matches were on pay-per-view, we watched every single one of those, and those were real life fights, right? And wrestling. We loved WWF back in the day. But no, of course I was like interested in it. And my dad was pretty liberal. He kind of let me see a lot of things. Yeah. then again, I mean, the draw of this in the year that it came out,
84.
what was I, 5?
No,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I was pretty
I don't know
young.
about this movie, but any sort of...
He didn't really protect me or shield me from any of this stuff. He was pretty open. I've told this to you.
Yeah.
The only film that my dad ever forbade me from watching that I remember...
It's so random, too.
...was Deliverance.
Yeah.
And to this day, I have chosen not to watch it because I take my dad's word so much as law that if he said, I don't want you watching that, I know he had a reason. And of course, now that I'm an adult, I know exactly what that reason is. And
squeal like a pig, boy.
I don't need to see that. I don't need to.
You'll never see Ned Beatty the same way.
I don't need to see that. And so that's the only thing he was like, absolutely not. You're not.
It is a great movie, though.
I know. I feel like I'm not sure I can handle.
It's fine. But I think your dad probably talked it up so how bad it is enough to where it'll have the opposite effect. You'll be like, oh, okay. It's not that bad.
I mean, this isn't a film he specifically talked about. The evil.
No. I'm talking about the Deliverance.
But I will tell you that I'm sure he loved this film. I have no doubt in my mind that this was a winner in his book. And one thing that I love about Charles Bronson.
Yeah.
He is just grace under fire. This guy is always figuring it out. And in this film, he was in a couple of very sticky situations that could have gone really south. Mm-hmm. And somehow what I loved about him is you can actually watch his gears turning as an actor in the role, mm-hmm. figuring out how he's going to calmly do something else that's going to solve the problem. And he always does that. And he does it really methodically. It's not cheesy. It's not contrived. Mm-mm. I actually get the sense that he's in a jam and he's got to solve it on the fly. And he's just one of those people that knows how to keep it together. Yeah. I really was impressed with that aspect of the film because, once again, they don't have to say anything or set it up.
There's a silent,
is.
Well, you were also saying, like, how old is he here? And I was like, he's like 63.
Unbelievable.
He's in great shape. Yeah.
The guy, like I said, he is just totally grace under fire. Mm-hmm. This guy has everything under control. If I were in a situation like this, heaven forbid, this is 100% the person mm-hmm. that I would want to be going into this with, because he is a person that when he says he's going to do something, he commits. And you can trust that he's got the right goals. Mm-hmm. He's got your best interest at heart. This guy is not a traitor. I love the character. I love everything about who the guy is.
Mm-hmm. So would you be more interested in Charles Bronson? Because I wouldn't pick... This doesn't seem like a traditional, I would say, female type of movie. This is a guy's movie, for lack of a better word. But this... You totally are into this, so maybe because you're all into murder podcasts and true crime and your background with things, like would you be more interested in these types of traditional guy films than probably you gave a chance when you were younger?
Well, I don't know if I had a chance when I was younger with all of these things. Again, I think it was 5 when this came out.
Well, no, as you got older, but it wasn't like you were going to revisit these.
But I've always been... I didn't even know about this film, so this wasn't even one that I was aware of. Mm-hmm. I had, literally, seriously, never heard of this film. Mm-hmm. But I'm probably more... Maybe I'm guessing at this, right? But I'm probably more drawn to these, mm-hmm. maybe, than the average female. I don't know for sure, but I do like films like this.
And you like vigilante movies?
I do, because I'm a scales of justice person, and I want those scales balanced. And Charles Bronson is going to balance those scales.
Well, yeah.
And I just think that comparative to other films that are like this, the amount of implied and subtlety versus just overt and in your face, it's quite literally the perfect balance. Some films don't get it as right as this one did, mm-hmm. and I really enjoyed it for that reason. Also, you had mentioned that, and I had no idea of the story, the lead actress, her name is Theresa Saldana. Beautiful lady. I had no idea what her real life story was till you told it to me, and I was floored that she was able to act in this film given what had happened.
Yeah, right after her attack happened in 1982, and this is the first movie she did afterwards. And actually, thinking about what she went through, this movie must have been kind of brutal in a way because, you know...
Well, would listeners even know what happened? I mean, let's just say I had no idea.
I did my little piece, but I also mentioned this on, I think, the Raging Bull episode, because she plays Joe Pesci's wife in Raging Bull. But yeah, long story short, you could look up Theresa Saldana. She was stalked and then attacked and almost killed. I guess
horrific.
This guy found out where she was, and in broad daylight, stabbed her with such force it bent the knife, and she survived. Amazingly,
thank goodness she survived, and she was able to even act again. I mean, what an incredible story of survival. I'm so glad she's okay. What an awful ordeal she must have been through. My gosh, I can't even imagine. But maybe she drew on some of that to be this character, and I can't imagine she didn't. Because once again, in real life and in this film, she kind of had to be a survivor.
Well, I think there's a lost era of like action heroes and guys like kind of the badass guy. Again, you mentioned Bronson, Eastwood, Stallone, Chuck Norris. Like those films, like people love those films, and I think they go back to them now because now, like, what actor would you think could pull off a role? And maybe Jason Statham.
Yeah.
He's really the last of that, and those films do well. Like, I hate to say it, and Jake Gyllenhaal just tried to redo Roadhouse, and it's awful. Like, it's just like...
Did you see? I mean, I didn't see it.
It looks so CGI'd and everything.
And I love him in other films.
It's a free movie. It's like a straight-to-video movie.
He's a great actor in other films. But I also loved, as cheesy as it might be, I love Patrick Swayze.
Oh, I do too.
And I loved him in the original.
Yeah.
I mean, I just loved him in everything. Right?
Well, again, we talk about this all the time. The advent of movie star, male and female, is over. There's very few actors and actresses that you will just pay to see whatever they're in today. They're all part of bigger picture. I mean, who's the biggest actress now? Margot Robbie?
Well, the Barbie movie certainly helped.
Right, but I'm not even sure it was because she was in it. I think anybody could have probably played Barbie at this point, and I like Margot Robbie. But people are going to see the superhero, or they're going to see whoever, and they're not going to see whoever just because they're in a movie like they used to. Like, you would see a shitty Stallone movie because Stallone was in it, or Schwarzenegger. You don't have that anymore.
The only films that I've said this to you, the only thing that I will have to go see in a theater, and it's actually not about the actors.
No, it's the director. About the directors.
Yeah. I have to see Christopher Nolan.
Well, he's been knocking it out of the park.
In the theater.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Oppenheimer, oh my gosh, please go. Because Brian here is not a lover of modern film, and he's definitely not a lover of long film. And he loved Oppenheimer.
I did, but I'll pick and choose. Like, today, you really have to be judicious, and it's not. And part of it's price, but the other part of it is like, I'm not going to waste my time on something like. That's time and time again, these directors and film editors are proving to me they don't know how to make a decent, entertaining film anymore. Every now and then, you'll get a great one where they just figure out they'll just make it fun. I think Antoine Fuqua is one of them with the Equalizer films and Denzel. Like they were smart.
Denzel, he's another one that. Denzel is like
school,
that modern,
but he's old now. I mean, like he's
Charles Bronson
he
guy.
Is.
Yeah, because I mean, he's another Grace Under Fire. Like the Equalizer character is the same exact way. He's so composed. Mm-hmm. He's going to figure it out. He's going to do it. I
think
love
it's
that.
Smart what they're doing with the Ghostbusters films. They're just trying to make them fun. Just make films fun or make them straight ahead. If you try to do all the other outside noise, you're going to turn people off.
I mean, and I'm like. Probably, well, I don't want to say probably. Well, I say definitely more so than you. I'm a lover of indie film.
We just saw, we went to the San Jose
CineQuest Film Festival in San Jose.
And that was a great film with Matthew Modine.
Oh my gosh.
The true story about the bicycle
Go
riders.
see it. It's called Hard Miles. It is so unbelievably good. I mean, Matthew Modine is kind of a cyclist in his personal life, but he went and used that.
But there is a good.
That was a great.
Harkens back to. There's a great movie that came out in 1979 called Breaking Away, where it's kind of that feel good coming of age movie, and there's no agenda. It's just a good, entertaining film. And none of the actors are known, with the exception of Matthew Modine, which was smart.
No.
Well,
actually, there's one actor that's known. I just laugh because it's Stanley from The Office.
Well, no, and Sean Astin.
And Sean Astin.
But no, they do a great job of just making an entertaining film. It's not too long. It's just it harkens back.
It's the right amount of funny and the right amount of emotion.
I don't want to say there aren't good movies that come out. They're just few and far between. And so when they get it right, that's great. But for the most part, it's not worth your time. That's why.
Go see Hard Miles. It's so good. It's coming out April 19th.
Well, that, and let's get back onto the topic at hand. The reason I do this is to reintroduce people to films they might have missed or never even heard of. And to me, The Evil That Men Do is so much better than anything that's come out in the last 15, 20 years.
I've never even heard of this, and I was really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it won't be for everyone because it is kind of brutal.
It's rough.
There's violence in it, but if you just want a straightforward justice vigilante movie, then it's as good as it gets.
It's as good as it gets. Yeah. I would highly recommend this, even though I do find it brutal and a little bit hard to watch, quite frankly, and was even cringing myself, and that takes a lot for me to do that. But boy, this was a pleasant surprise in that I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
And I did think that it was really well executed, and I don't know what kind of success it was when it came out, but I do think that this one is
it did pretty well at the box office.
It's worth going back and checking it out. I do think that anyone who's a fan of a good action movie and a strong anti-hero and just would really be interested in this.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we're gonna have to watch more Charles Bronson movies.
Absolutely, more Charles Bronson. Yay!
If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.